Okay. All right. So we did wrap up our subcommittee on the ARC-PAC committee as far as donations to candidates, and we have decided to give $19,800. We will be voting on that next month and then cutting those checks out to these candidates. Really exciting times. I mean, I'm glad for those that were on the subcommittee. I really appreciate your time. Okay. As a reminder for you guys, we always want to make sure that you please join the Arlington Republican Club and, membership. And as we have here's $40, and to become a Gold Star is $100. Upcoming speakers, as I mentioned, is going to be Tim Davis next month, and we're going to have the honor of having Alexander Jones, our Chief of Police here in Arlington, coming up in August. And can we go to the next page? This is exciting. This is what your membership money is being used for, any money that we raise. We are going to be hosting the first annual, The Legacy of Valor, and the whole focus is going to be honoring our military vets, our first responders, and it is about, let's give back to them. They sacrifice in our community. They're the ones that go out for our freedom. We need to give back and give the honor that they deserve. So we're in the midst of getting this thing, completed. So I just wanted everyone to know that this is going to be something just fantastic. And we just really want to just say, you know what, it's about you guys. So that's going to be super, super exciting. So more to come on that. So Vincent.
So what you should know about our speaker tonight is that he's a fighter. So in doing business development and all that, he was really fighting for small businesses and fighting for businesses to help them develop and succeed. But now that we have him in the public sector, we're the winners because he's on the Carroll ISD school board. He's down in Austin fighting. Carroll ISD has been the most fightingest district in the entire state. They fought the state, they fought the Biden administration, and they are winning these battles. So it was really important for us tonight on the board to get Andrew here to speak about what is going on behind the scenes at school boards, kind of deciphering what does all this money mean and what are we getting for this money. So he has been an incredible fighter. We're really honored to have him here, and thank you, Andrew Yeager.
Well, thank you guys so much. When you've been traveling so much and you've been speaking so much, you just kind of don't know where you are. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, if you've woken up in a hotel room and you literally wake up and you're like, where am I today? I had like one of those experiences this afternoon. It's just been going crazy. Yesterday for my day job, we were down in Conroe, and we had a great event meeting the newest Texas State Senator, Brett Ligon. And that was at the Honor Cafe. And if you're a veteran, if you don't know the Honor Cafe, they have one in Conroe, and then they have one, I think, in Beaumont. But they're just wonderful cafes, restaurants that are really dedicated to those that have served us. And you go in, and it's like a military museum. It's wonderful. So that's where I was yesterday. And then, anybody here go down to the Houston, to the convention? Anybody else? Yeah. So we were there for the whole week. I was a delegate for the first time. My wife was on the platform committee, so we had to come in Sunday night and stay all the way through Saturday. So we were held hostage in downtown Houston, which was my first time, honestly, doing that. I'd spent a lot of time in Houston for business, but never down there. So 5+ years ago in South Lake, we had a pretty interesting phenomena. It was just sleepy summer, but it was the summer of COVID, what I call the plandemic. And as you recall, during the plandemic, we all started to learn a little bit about what was happening in our children's schools. And I still had one of my 3 daughters, was still in high school at the time. And I remember getting an email, and the email had a PDF attached to it, and it was about 35 pages, and it was called the Cultural Competency Action Plan. And this, as we called the CCAP, was a 35-page, and I later in one of my campaign forums called it a communist manifesto. The people who I worked with at the time, NBC, didn't like one of their employees talking about a communist manifesto in public. That's another story for another time. But what happened is our school board, unbeknownst to the people in Southlake, was trying to push in, and they were caught actually having a walking quorum, trying to align the votes to get this passed. They were trying to push in a policy and curriculum agenda that was very far left. So this is the summer of Defund the Police, 2020. They said in this manifesto, remove all of the police from our schools, right? Why would you do that? We're a constitutional carry state. We have great Southlake Police Department in all of our 11 campuses. It's award-winning SRO program. They wanted to do that because the police, in the eyes of who wrote this, were bad. They wanted to police microaggressions, even unintended microaggression. Does anybody have a clue what a unintended microaggression is? Can you imagine policing that for grammar school kids? It's like Billy looks at Susie and Susie says, he looked at my hair. And all of a sudden he's in the principal's office and he's been accused of an unintended microaggression. It's crazy. And that the seniors, before they graduated, were required to read Marxist authors. That's how bad this was. And we thought things were okay in our schools until we got a copy of this. And that was on a Friday. And the school board meeting, remember virtual school board meetings? The school board meeting was that Monday. So over the weekend, we absolutely mobilized like crazy. And my wife, of course, decided to sign me up as the first virtual speaker for Monday's school board meeting. There were 99 people after me. Okay, there were 100 virtual speakers, including many people that you would know. I'm sure, if Tim Davis, Tim O'Hare, I mean, it was a who's who of Southlake politicians and now in Tarrant County, all saying this is bad and this cannot pass. These policies and this radical curriculum can't pass. So move forward a little bit and we mobilize. Thanks to people like Tim O'Hare, thanks to people like Lee Wamsgans, Alan West at the time, I can't remember in his capacity, but he came over and speak. Dana Lesh, who lives in Southlake, and we all mobilized, and we're all 6 feet apart, of course, in this Baptist church in Grapevine, and we said, we've got to do something. Obviously, that the school board does not represent the values of our community. And so we got together, and we won in May of 21, 2 seats, but we still had a 3-4 minority position in our school board. That summer, people came to me and said, we'd like you to run. I said, great. I was all planning to run the next May. And then lo and behold, one of the gentlemen who was caught up in this walking quorum, indicted, decided, I'm retired, I'm moving to Colorado, I'm out of here. And so there was an empty seat. And those conservatives that we had pushed and said, we don't want an appointment, we want an election. So it's sort of like someone gets called up, a pitcher gets called up from AAA, hey, we need you in the bigs like tomorrow. So they got me on the horn and they said, you were supposed to, you said you'd run next spring. We need you to actually run November. And that means you need to actually fill out an application file like next week. So sure enough, I said yes. It was hard. Originally I said no, but I had a night of prayer and God's like, if not you, who? Right? If not you, who? We got precinct chairs in here and you guys get that. If you're not going to do the job, who's going to do it, right? So anyway, I threw my hat in the ring and it was crazy. I was still working at NBC. I had to sign some pretty interesting documents, which basically amounted to a gag order. They were doing critiques of me, very critical, They were doing critiques of our school board and our town. And I couldn't, basically, it's like, as long as you're employed here, you can't say anything bad about us. So it was very difficult. And of course, my mother at the time, who was still alive, it was in Michigan, and looking at the news and seeing me on NBC News. And she's like, this is weird. They're saying, like, you're believing all these bad things. And I said, Mom, you've known me for 50 plus years. And she's like, yeah, you're a good person. And I said, well, they just disagree with some of these crazy things that we're against, right? So I just ran on a conservative, common sense platform. Thankfully, that first election, we had record turnout, 65% of the vote. Then the woman I ran against, sure enough, all the media, they went to her and said, what are you going to do? And she's like, well, I'm going to run again. And she did in the following May. So we decided, let's just crank it up a bit. We beat her 71% of the vote. And guess what? She moved the next year. So that's a beautiful thing when that happens that way. So now we are a 7-0 board, 7-0 conservatives. It took us, 3+ elections to get there, and we still fight to hold on to it. We did move our elections to November, which I think is a really good thing. So we'll see what happens. We've got 3 seats that are coming up in November, but we've got a pretty good record of winning, of conservatives coming out, getting the vote out, and winning. In South Lake, we have a very high voter turnout, so we're going to keep that going. So I like to say, let's make our public schools great again. And these are just some thoughts and insights that I want to share. And if we can go to the next slide, thanks, Vince. Truly, we did not coordinate the St. Michael the Archangel socks. I just wear those when I may be going into battle. I'd like Vince to actually click on, if you could do the control click. 40, thank you very much. My name is Andrew Yeager, and I am the Vice President of the Carroll Independent School District School Board in South Lake, Texas. I represent our Board of Trustees, led by our President, Cam Bryan, Secretary Christy Stacy, myself. I'm here to voice support for SB 240, the Texas Women's Privacy Act. At Carroll, you've heard a little bit about our school district. We have a local policy that protects our young women and girl students in that the use of schools' bathrooms and locker rooms are determined by a student's biological sex at birth. Students who need a private bathroom have that option on every one of our campuses. It's easily accessible, and it is an individual private stall. Our local policies also ban compelled speech. So teachers and students are not forced to use the pronoun due to a student's gender preference. Likewise, teachers are not required to use a student's pronoun assigned and aligned to their biological sex. Our goal is true freedom of speech on all of our campuses. By passing SB 240, this committee in the Senate and this legislature has the opportunity to afford the same protection that Carroll ISD girls have, but for the entire state of Texas. Every woman in Texas and girl will have this opportunity, and they should have that opportunity to be protected. Please know that SB 240, in SB 240, you have the full support of the federal government. This past summer, our school district sued the Biden administration's radical rewrite of Title IX that challenged our local policy. I'm glad to report that last month, the final ruling was issued by Fort Worth Federal Court Judge, Mr. Reed O'Connor, striking down the Biden administration's rule nationwide. This outcome reaffirms our school board's commitment to standing up for our students, parents, and the shared values of our community. I ask for your support of SB 240 today and until its passing into law when signed by the governor. Thank you very much. 2 years before the state acted to protect women and girls in bathrooms, locker rooms, and sports teams, and also to ban compelled speech, we did it at South Lake. My point is right there in that question. Why do we need to wait for our state or for even the federal government to do good things? We can be doing great things locally. City councils and school boards don't have to wait. They can create local policies that support our values. And that's exactly what we did, and that's why it was really fun, one, to be a part of writing that, and then two, when the Alliance Defending Freedom came in and said, you know, with the Biden administration, you all probably are going to end up in court. And we said, bring it on. And we decided to act proactively. It didn't cost our taxpayers any money because Alliance Defending Freedom works pro bono from all of the fundraising that they do. So we went and we said, we're going to push it forward, and we got Reed O'Connor, the judge, in that court, if you know that federal courthouse downtown Fort Worth. And it's pretty intimidating when you go into a federal courthouse and you sit down with your fellow school board officers, and the other person comes in and they say into their microphone, representing the United States of America. You are literally suing your own government. But to protect the innocence of girls and women, it was totally worth it. So that might be the epitaph if my wife decides to bury me in the ground. I don't know if it will fit in my church if I go into like a wall, but we're gonna find a way. But I'm excited about that, because you know what, that's substance, right? That's some significant local policy that we did, and we made it stick. I have not given up on public schools, and I don't want anybody in this room to either. Because guess what? The infrastructure's there. The buildings are there. The teachers, the admin, and most importantly, the students. The majority of our students in the state are going to public schools, like my 3 daughters, like myself, right? So how can we possibly make them great again? I want to just give you some ideas in this presentation that you can take. A lot of people say, well, you're in Southlake. It's the money, right? You've got all this money to have great schools. Well, I'm going to show you a couple slides that actually prove the opposite of that. One of which is the tax rate. And y'all probably know when it comes to taxes, and we know about this, and that is that your property tax, right? The largest portion of your property tax is your school tax. A lot of people don't break out the school tax, though, to understand that it's maintenance and operation, M&O, and it's also interest and sinking, which is the bond debt that you have, and that varies quite a bit. But school districts and those trustees, they're in charge of a lot of the tax rate, because that's what we do. It's one of the things we're elected to do is set the tax rate. So as you can see here, look at all the ISDs here. And then we now, Grapevine Colleyville, they've done a really good job up until, I think, recently. We'll probably pass them. So we are at 0.92, 92 cents on every $100 of evaluation of property. And you can see here about $1.40. That's like the high water mark, okay? If you go back to that slide, Vince, that shows the reading at grade level, isn't it weird? It's almost inverse, isn't it? The lowest tax rate has the best reading scores. That's weird. The highest tax rates have the lowest reading scores. I wonder about that. Interesting. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So when I got on the board, I looked at the 2 conservatives who had just won, and we got on and we were talking about not only what do we need to do from a curriculum point of view, from just a general cultural point of view, to make sure that our values are in the school district in every aspect of the school district, but we said, how do we make this fiscally conservative as well? And so here's where we got on. Right in here. And you see what happened? Right? So we said, I don't know about you, but I remember paying off my mortgage years ago. It was the coolest thing ever. How do we pay the school, the ISD's mortgage off as soon as possible? And not that I've sat through Dave Ramsey courses, but I know when you don't have debt or your debt goes down, you have freedom and you have options. Today, school districts, the majority of them, do not have options, and their taxpayers don't have freedom because they're caught. They're caught with a high tax rate, and a lot of debt. That has been because of decisions that that school board and the community voting have made. Okay? So we decided, you know what? We're going to pay down and do defeasements to pay off our bond debt that we inherited. We're going to do it as quickly as we can. And it's not quite like a mortgage where you can literally just write as many, checks to pay it off. You have calls on your debt, right? So I looked at our CFO, I found out when those calls were, I got on our finance committee, and we started to say, okay, we're going to do as much defeasement as we possibly can, keeping the INS rate where it is, and we're going to just erase this so that we can start to do what we wanted, to bring the overall tax rate down. So in the last 3 years, we have brought our tax rate down below the no new revenue level. I don't know any school district in the state that's done that 3 years in a row. Many have never done it, okay? So that's going to keep going. We're going to do it again this coming year is what I predict. And so it's really about the debt. A building that we can put towards salaries, right, and programs. So again, it's the priorities of the community. And I think as conservatives, we haven't really thought in these terms, and we need to speak up. So if I said to somebody without looking at that slide, what is the reading level? What are the percent of students that read at grade level? And I looked at anybody here, you probably wouldn't know, right? So what I'd like to tell people is learn what that number is. If it's an acceptable number, if it's in the 80s or higher, that's awesome. You got a good board, they're probably on top of it. If it's like a lot of these and they're low, I believe we need to go into our school boards or even sit and have coffee, not yell, but just say, hey, Sam, I noticed we're at 33% reading at grade level. What can we do, and what are you doing at the board to raise it? Give them the benefit of the doubt. We were talking about being Christians. I believe in giving people grace, but guess what? I'm also watching the clock, right? And I'm going to give you some time to fix it. And that time is finite. So have a plan, work your plan. So let's start holding them accountable by metrics. Let me tell you this story too, you probably know. The state gives out A through F accountability ratings for every school district. It's also every campus. So your elementary schools, wherever you live, they all have a rating. There were districts in the state of Texas who sued the TEA and said, we're blocking those ratings. That's the equivalent of me when my kids were still in high school and it was report card day, and I said, Lucy, I understand grades were released today. Yeah, Dad. She goes upstairs, shuts the door. Yeah, could we see those? Talk to my lawyer. That's what these schools were doing. They were suing the state not to release their report card. I taught as an adjunct professor in college for 4 years. I loved it. My mother taught, my grandmother taught. Every aunt and uncle I had was a teacher. I found out this. Teachers love to give report cards. I don't know how much they like to get report cards. And you might say, well, those are based on STAR tests, but you know what? It's the same measuring stick. It may not be a great test, but it's the same measuring stick for every school, right? So you have to have something that is a way to measure the academic performance. And so when our schools are literally suing our state to say, you're not going to release the report card on my district, that's like, what are we hiding, right? Let's be real, right? So those are now all released. So not only can you go to your district and say, what's our percent of students reading at grade level? You can say, I would like to see the report card from the state that's public information for every single campus. And same thing, if one of them is a D or C, just like you would with a student, I'd sit down with my daughter and say, what are we doing to get that to a B? What are we doing to get that to an A? And have a plan. To me, this isn't really even an R or D thing. This is good governance. And maybe the fault lies on us, just like that was 6 years ago when I didn't know people on my board and all of a sudden they wanted to do these truly Marxist things. We got educated and we got involved. So if you think of the analogy of your schools or your community garden, in South Lake we decided to pull over when we saw weeds. We got our hands in the dirt and we started pulling weeds. And now it's bountiful and it produces fruit. And guess what? The fruit are good student outcomes. That's what we all want. We all want to have a great community garden. You know, when my wife and I drive up, we're skiers, so we drive through the Panhandle. I can tell you, by the way, any place that's open on a Sunday in the Panhandle to get a cheeseburger, it's not too many, but there are a couple. And I love going through these small towns that have a big wood billboard, and it's got blue ribbon schools, A+. That's my dream, is that every town in Texas, you hit the border and they got that big sign and it says A+, we love our schools, because that's a sense of community, and you can't get that if your district is suing the state to say, don't share our report card, right? We got to turn that around, and it's really about accountability, financially as well. So at any rate, so you can see right here, guys, we are on pace to be the only 6A school district in the state of Texas by 2031, 5 years, that will have virtually no bond debt at all. It can be done, but it can't be done when the priorities are, we're going to build the Death Star of all indoor practice facilities and not get the required teachers to get the reading scores up. Again, the community has to say, what are our priorities? Yeah, I love indoor practice facilities. We have one. Guess what? We changed the lights. We painted it. You know, I mean, we put in the new turf, right? Bless you. Sometimes you put in paint in the house, and sometimes you do, you know, go buy a brand new Taj Mahal home, right? But right now, I think the budgets are so tight, we should be thinking about paint and light bulbs and not be thinking about construction costs. Okay, bless you. All right. So, as I said before, there's a report card. It's available. It's public information for every school district. Here's my belief, and if we can pop out to see that, I believe every ISD owes it to the taxpayers and the people in the community, is not to be like, you know, that story of my daughter going up and slamming the door and not showing the report card. I believe it should be on your district's website. So, right, every single campus is an A. You know who loves that? Realtors. Realtors go, I sit with them once a year. It's my favorite breakfast. And I guess if we start getting bad grades, it won't be my favorite breakfast. But they literally tell people when they're moving from California or New Jersey or Chicago, all these places, they're moving there and they're like, I don't know what neighborhood I should live in. You know, tell me about the elementary school. We tell our realtors in South Lake, just go to this page. Because you know what? Pick your dream house. All the elementary schools are A's. There's no difference. There's no difference. They all perform well. So pick your home. Don't worry about your neighborhood schools. But all of these things here that you see up here, we're very proud of. And we just won our 10th Lone Star Cup, which is awarded to the public school in each of the districts, you know, 6A, I should say, conferences, or what are they called, divisions. And no one's ever won 10 before in 6A. So we're really proud of that. But that is UIL sports, that's academics, that's extracurriculars. It's not just, you know, a couple sports. It's all these things that are going on. So we have our report card right there on our website for everybody to see. The other thing is National Merit Scholars, right? You know, that's a wonderful thing. National Merit Scholars gives you an idea of, are we educating our students to perform at the highest levels? 32 that we had this past year. And as you can see, in the last 5 years since I got on our board, that has increased by 30% over the previous 5 years. So we talk about priorities. We're really dialed into academic excellence. And Lone Star Cups, A ratings. Next slide. Oh, at the top. I want to talk just a little bit about this, and if we could go back to the very early slide, Vince, that showed the reading at grade level. I want to talk about the money per student that the state of Texas gives to ISDs. It is it's very great and wide in terms of the delta. In South Lake, Carroll, we have about $8,200 per student. That is the lowest of 1,200 school districts per student. You might say, how does this make sense? You guys have, homes that are really expensive? We do. But what the state does, the state says, after this level, we're going to take the money and recapture, called Robin Hood, right? We're not the only district. There's over 200 districts where this happens. We don't keep the tax dollars that we get. In fact, between 20 and 30 million, or about 20 to 30% of our tax dollars collected, leaves South Lake. We have no idea what happens to it. It goes to Austin. There's never been an audit of the recapture program. When we have a new comptroller in, we're going to ask for an audit. We did before, we didn't hear anything back. And we're not saying blow up the program of funding. We're just saying, would you maybe doge it, look at it? Because we believe they're taking in twice as much as they need. Because property values all over the state have gone up. The number of public school kids has gone down. So something's not working out, right? So if we could just get half of that $25 million back, we'd be happy. But it wouldn't just be us, it would be 200 other districts that would be in the same boat. So if you take a look, I was just going to pick on the big ISD here, Fort Worth ISD. Remember, we said Carroll's at 92% of our students reading at grade level. You can see where Fort Worth is, Fort Worth ISD. You know how much they get per student? Over $17,000. Okay, 8,200, 17,000. 92%, 35%. Okay, I don't believe, in my humble opinion, they're spending their money wisely. Because does it really cost more than twice as much 5 miles away, 10 miles away from us to educate a child, at least to get them to 50%? People might say, well, English language is their second language. Okay, fine. That's why the state gives you more money. Well, they might say economically disadvantaged. That's why the state gives you more money. That's why there's a big difference. And this is what I think is sort of this secret, if you would. The amount of money going to districts for all the weights that the state gives per student based upon the demographics, they're getting the money. I just don't know that they're spending it wisely because the product is not good. So when you're trapped in one of these ISDs, remember we talked about options? Your tax rate is maxed, your bond debt is maxed, and the state is saying, we're giving you a lot of money and the product is bad. What do you do? Right? And that's why people have run towards ESAs and other programs because they're like, we've tried it all, right? It's not fair. Somebody just lives in this zip code and they are getting a really bad product. I believe the answer, a lot of it lies in the school board. Because I think if we start electing people who know these issues, they know what their reading scores are, and that they said, let's have a plan. They know what the bond debt is, let's have a plan. Oh, we're already maxed out, we're crushing our property owners. Well, let's start to bring it down. Let's pay that mortgage off. Let's stop building these things. So I've come up with just a few things, and Vince, if we can go to, I think it might be one of the last slides things, is, here's some how-tos. This worked for us. Doesn't mean it's going to work for every district, but I can tell you for sure the Texas Association of School Boards, which all but one school district in the state is a member. I wonder which one is not a member. They probably don't teach their school board trustees these things. That's why we have the problems we do. Number one, we went in and we created a local policy that said this board and boards in the future cannot pass a deficit budget. Boom. Right away, right? Balanced budget amendment is what we would call it right at the state and federal level. Well, why aren't we doing it locally? Okay? He's smiling because he's like, that's a good idea. That it starts right there. If there's one thing that you could do, get that passed at your district. Things would start changing immediately. And then we talked about administrative efficiencies. Guess what? You flip your board, or you at least change the thinking of your current board, maybe the superintendent you have does not have the critical thinking skills, the business skills necessary to think out of the box. They may not be the right person for the job. And that's what a good school board can do, is that they can start to rate and judge and do just like corporate America. We have a performance review. Have a really good performance review for your superintendent, and then down the line to the admin, to the principals, right? All the way down to the teachers. And with that, you can say, I think you could save some money. When our students started to go, our enrollment started to go down, we started to leave devices. We, by the way, got rid of one-to-one devices 2 years ago for our grammar schools. We said, we're not buying one-to-one devices. We're going to workbooks. We want our students to read and write. Teachers loved it. Curriculum department said, literally, we can do that? We said, yeah, we're the school board. We can do what you want. And they said, we would love to do that. We literally had the truck back up with the workbooks, right? We were there and they were coming off, and we did not renew our contracts to buy more devices. Parents were over the moon excited. Now that idea's kind of caught on and people are starting to do it. Also in South Lake today, because of AI and all the issues with academic dishonesty, all of our tests now are on paper, right? And if you have a proctor for an SAT or an ACT or an SAT, bless you, guess what? It's a very regimented testing protocols. Looking this way, you come into the classroom, you can't go to the bathroom. That's it, right? We're doing those types of protocols for all of our test days as well. And, the teachers were saying, gosh, it's so hard to schedule makeups. I feel like that's on. No, you have like one makeup day, or here's the 2 makeup days. So we're really preparing the students for the real world. Because whether they go to college or they become a realtor or a plumber, they're going to have to take probably licensing and tests. I don't know about you, but I've gone to testing centers. You can't cheat. You can't wear an Apple Watch. You can't wear Google glasses. You can't do any of that stuff. So those are the types of things that we're doing. But we also cut efficiencies at the admin. So my story was to say this. We cut our IT department in half. We've cut our marketing department in half, right? Those are all non-teacher positions. They cost a lot of money. Zero-based budgeting. Athletic director, I'm not picking on ours, but just imagine athletic director comes and goes, yeah, I'm so used to 5% increase every year. And you went to him and said, hey, Larry, how about 0% increase? Because that's what it is zero, right? And they go, I'm going to have to tighten the belt. We've done that with every department. We've been doing it for 5 years. So zero-based budgeting, if you're a CPA or you work in the corporate world, you know what zero-based budgeting is. Well, why don't you go to your school board and give them an idea to try it, right? That's a good one. Energy management plan, my favorite one. We literally hired somebody. This was saving us so much money, we could pay for their position 5 times over. We used to go in the summer to our school district. In the summer, when nobody's in a gigantic tens of thousands of square feet building, and it was 68 degrees. True story. Now, if I go in there, I'm going to sweat if I've got a suit on. Because thermostat management and other things that we have done has saved the district $300,000. That's low-hanging fruit, right? There isn't a district that can't do that. By the way, we had an emergency meeting after our coach decided to go to SMU. It's kind of get like a lump of coal in your stocking for Christmas because you did such a great job. But we had a meeting, and it was during Christmas break, not winter break, by the way. You can call it Christmas break, and we now call it Christmas break. And we went in, and there's an emergency meeting of the officers. Guess what? The building was 65 degrees. I'm like, perfect. It shouldn't be warm right now. Saves big money. Shopping for the best prices on labor and goods, that makes sense. Uncoupling technology, I talked about that before, right? And for our high school students, guess what? It's BYOD, bring your own device. We're not going to be the geek center for Southlake, and that we pay people with the tax dollars to fix kids' computers, right, when they pour their Starbucks coffee on them. Nope, sorry, because you know why? We don't own the device anymore. You do, and your parents can bring it. Now, if there's some kids that are economic hardships, we'll work it out. And then right-sizing the physical plant to match their enrollment. That's a tough decision, but it needs to be done. And what we're doing in Carroll is when we sell a property, which is anywhere from $750,000 to $1 million an acre, we're doing what universities have been doing for years, building an endowment. Get the interest off the endowment when you get tens of millions of dollars. That interest, guess what? We can give our teachers a raise now, anytime we want, regardless of what they do at the state level. Every district in Tarrant County probably has too much property. So ask your trustees, are you in the real estate game or are you in the education game? Because I think that field over there, you're probably paying to mow it. You're probably paying to insure it. How about selling it, putting those funds into an endowment? I know, right? Crazy ideas. And then how to generate more revenue. So we basically came in and our buses, the bus passes had not been raised in years. The price of a school lunch, still very inexpensive, hadn't been raised for years. That department now actually makes us money. It used to be that we were losing money. And we go through every department. How can that department then at least be neutral, right, and self-sufficient? Then we talked about selling surplus properties in the endowment and then partnering. Dragon Stadium, guess what? We have a logo on it. It didn't change the name, but there is a logo from a nearby hospital. Well, that brings in 5 years, $500,000, right? So these are real ideas. They're not our ideas. They're not D ideas. They're just good governance. So let's find people to run, just like me. Somebody came up and tapped on my shoulder. I said, I taught in college, but I don't have an EDU. I don't have a doctorate in Guess what? We don't need teachers on school boards. We need a lawyer, a doctor, a marketer, an engineer. We need just regular people. It's like the people who founded our country. They came from all these different backgrounds. And every background, they brought a new skill, right? So we want people from outside the education world to be able to look at it critically. We have to break also the nepotism. Well, that's my friend who's a principal. I can't close their campus. You got to think of the big picture and what's best for the health of the district. Because when a district is healthy, you have options. When a district is healthy, your students are going to benefit because you can pay the good teachers and keep them, right? So these are all the things that we're doing. And what do you think is a qualification for a school board trustee candidate? And I've already said I don't think they should come from the academic world. I think, the buildings are full of people from the academic world. We need people from the outside to bring in ideas and fresh perspective. And I really think the number one thing is courage. But we are in a courage crisis. And when we see it, we know it, but we don't see it a lot. And I think at the local level, we rarely see it. And that's why we're hurting so much as a state on the local level. So think about this quote. And this is from Pope Benedict XVI. I like to say, the good Pope before the other ones that we had recently. He was the good one. He was from Germany. The world offers you comfort, but you were not made for comfort. You were made for greatness. I love that quote. We have to get out of our hot tubs in the world of comfort, and we have to say, okay, right, on my tombstone, there's my birth date and there's my death. It's the dash. What am I going to do with the dash? Do I want to go get a great title, have the flashiest car, fancy watch, blah, blah, blah? Or do I want to be significant? Is success more important or being significant? We made changes to our district that are going to outlast me and my colleagues. And most importantly, it's going to affect the students that are there. That's what I love, is seeing how did we affect students, how did we help them, springboard them. If we're all focused and we're not afraid to make some sacrifices, guys, we have to make some sacrifices, because I don't want to have, and you don't, people who complain and they're not precinct chairs and they're not delegates and they didn't run for something, or they didn't help as a campaign manager, or even write a check. You're here because you're in the game. We got to go one step further and get this public school thing right. We can do it. And lastly, I heard this great line from a gentleman, Kevin Roberts, actually, the president of the Heritage Foundation. And you know what he said? He said, institutions, the job of educational institutions isn't just to educate students, but it's to pass on the traditions and the heritage of our country. So when we started this year, our 250th anniversary, you'll see this. This is on the football field in South Lake Carroll. This is on the gymnasium courts. This is in every single building you walk in, is this sticker. You tune into our board meetings, this is the biggest thing you see on the TV screen, is this. We have lapel pins and we have these yard signs. By the way, if anybody wants one, I brought one. This is something that our institution should be doing too. Pass on the heritage. And I can guarantee you, there is not a single kid in South Lake Carroll who does not know this is the 250th anniversary of the greatest country in the world which they live in. Thank you very much for your time.